Welcome back to 90s Punk Rock Covers. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to talk about the Leica MP Type 240. Now, a few months ago, I made a video about my Leica QP, and I called it my favorite digital camera ever. Well, that is still true. This MP camera has been such a joy to use in the last couple of months. I've had a really hard time putting it down. So what is the Leica MP Type 240? Well, this camera was first introduced in August 2014 and is basically the successor to the Leica M9. The Type 240 name was the model number Leica opted to go with, as opposed to calling it an M10. This model was basically Leica's attempt to sort of modernize their M camera lineup. This camera features a movie mode, live view, an optional EVF accessory attachment, a 24 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor, weather sealing, and a few other things while still maintaining that traditional Leica M look. The cool thing about the P model is the omission of the red Leica logo in the front of the camera, which in turn makes the camera look a little bit more stealthy and less present. Other features are a larger buffer size, a sapphire crystal glass LCD screen, which is more resistant to scratches and dings. So why did I pick up this camera in 2020 and not a newer M10 model, for example? Well, for one, I have always wanted to own a digital Leica M, specifically the Type 240. I have always thought it looked beautiful, and its features were really more than enough for the type of shooting that I like to do. Now, compared to the price of a new or even a used M10, I just couldn't justify spending the extra money on a camera body at this time, specifically when the differences between the two cameras are marginal at best, really. Plus, I miss having the ability to change lenses, which is the only trade-off of the Leica QP with its fixed 28mm lens. But really the main reason for me to even get into a new Leica system at this point was my discontent and feeling uninspired with new modern cameras. I have been primarily a Canon shooter since I started in photography, but have dwelled into the Fujis and the Panasonics, and none of those cameras ever inspired me or really made me truly enjoy the process of taking photographs. Sure, I've captured some great photos with them, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses like everything else, but at the end of the day, all of those brands pretty much feel the same. I feel like they all try to compete against each other by offering pretty much the same tech, only under a different branding, and that became extremely boring for me. Now, Leica, on the other hand, has always cared more about the experience and usability rather than packing their cameras with tons of features that in the end they get lost in the mix. Now, shooting with a Leica camera is definitely a rewarding experience in my opinion. Having to rely on all manual controls just brings a different feel to photography in general, which is why I even got into film a few years ago. There was a disconnect between me and the camera I was using at the time, and it really felt like the camera was doing all of the thinking for me, and I was just basically pressing the shutter button. Now, don't get me wrong, technology is great, autofocus is awesome. I learned photography using autofocus and I still use it to this day, but shooting a camera like the M is much more rewarding once you get the shot yourself. Now, obviously no camera is perfect, there's always going to be trade-offs, but honestly, I can get past the imperfections and just basically enjoy this camera for what it is, photography. Now, getting used to a rangefinder camera system can be a little scary at first. Basically, you're looking through this window as opposed through the lens. So for example, even with the lens cover attached, I can still see through this window and even focus. Now, the way you manual focus is by using this small patch, which when you're trying to focus, you see a split image. And as you focus, the two images join together, and that's how you know you are in focus. Again, it sounds harder than what it really is, but once you get a hand of it, focusing is really easy and accurate. Now, this camera is really not meant for sports or fast moving events. This is primarily a photojournalistic camera. It makes you slow down, compose your shot, and just enjoy the process of taking photographs. Now, I talked about the compactness of my Leica QP, and although this camera is a little bit bigger and heftier, it's much smaller and comfortable to carry around than a DSLR or mirrorless camera. The rangefinder lenses are tiny and much smaller than any other lenses out there. I love the controls. Basically everything is at your fingertips without any unnecessary buttons or dials to get in the way, much like all Leica cameras. At the end of the day, all you need to take a good photograph is shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and manual focus. The image quality you get out of this 5-year-old sensor is amazing and still holds up with the big boys at 24 megapixels, which is more than enough for my needs. The photographs I get out of this camera are definitely more filmic, even more so than my Leica QP, I think. The DNG files grade really nicely and contain tons of information and have a sort of character to them that I really like. Now, I find myself composing my shots with my subjects in the center pretty much always now, since this camera only meters in the center of the frame. So when it comes to focusing and recomposing your shot, it can be a little tricky since you can't move that focus center point anywhere else like you can on a modern camera. I was lucky enough to pick this camera up used at a fantastic price. I did a lot of research and I looked at the price range these cameras go in the used market, and the deal I got was definitely one of the best I had seen in a while. Now, the camera has a few bumps and the sensor was a little bit dusty, so I had to give it a nice cleaning, but mechanically it works perfectly. And based on the image count, I'll say there were about 5,000 plus actuations on the shutter, so it will definitely hold up for many more years. Now, before I purchased this camera, I sold all of my Canon cameras and a few lenses I had, except my C200, which is my main video camera, and kept a few Canon lenses. But for now, I just picked up a couple of Voigtlander lenses, the 35mm f1.4 Nocton Classic and the 50mm f1.5. Now, Leica lenses are super expensive, so it will take me a while to build a lens kit. I know changing camera systems can feel daunting, especially if you have been loyal to a particular brand for so long, but honestly, making this switch has been the best thing I have done. I wish I would have just done this sooner, and I probably would have saved myself a lot of money that way. Of course, the Leica system is expensive, as I mentioned in my last video, but if it means you taking more photos and enjoying the experience in shooting with a camera, then it is all worth it in the end. Alright, this is it for today's video. I really hope you all enjoyed another photography video. Like I said in my last video, I really want to start pushing this type of content as well to keep the channel a little bit more diverse. As always, thank you all for your support. If you are new to the channel, consider subscribing. Hit me with a like if you enjoy this video, ring the bell for notifications, and also check me out on Instagram where I post tons of gear photos using this Leica MP. See you in the next video. Cheers.